The human delegation arrived at the Valkyrie capital with a sense of optimism, unaware that the galaxy's most feared species was only a breath away from unleashing their wrath. The ornate palace, carved from black stone and adorned with shimmering metal, stood in stark contrast to the barren landscape of the planet. Despite the intimidating surroundings, the humans carried on with the confidence of a species that had just begun to explore the stars. Ambassador Layla Carter, the head of the human delegation, stood at the forefront of the negotiation. She was a seasoned diplomat, respected for her calm demeanor and sharp mind. Today, however, she was walking into a storm she couldn't even begin to comprehend. The Valkyrie, known for their ruthless military campaigns and swift conquests, had invited them for what was supposed to be a peaceful exchange. But there was a tense air in the room. The Valkyrie Emperor, a towering figure of cold eyes and unreadable expression, had not spoken a word since their arrival. His silence felt heavy, almost oppressive. The human team presented their proposals for peace, trade routes, shared resources, and mutual protection against external threats. The humans had carefully crafted their terms, knowing the importance of making a good first impression. They understood that diplomacy was their only hope of navigating the galaxy without a target on their back. However, as the meeting progressed, a minor misstep occurred. Ambassador Carter, in an attempt to impress, accidentally referenced a historical event that the Valkyrie considered a source of immense shame. The Valkyrie had once been defeated in a bloody war against a rival species, an event that was still a raw wound in their collective psyche. Carter, unaware of this sensitivity, innocently made the comparison to emphasize humanity's progress in overcoming conflicts. The room fell silent. The Valkyrie Emperor's icy gaze locked onto her, his expression hardening. The tension was palpable. Carter, sensing the shift, attempted to salvage the conversation, her voice faltering as she tried to explain that it was an unintended mistake. But the damage had already been done. With a swift motion, the Emperor stood, his large form casting a long shadow over the diplomats. His voice, when it came, was a low growl, both cold and menacing. "You insult us on our very soil, human. You will pay the price for your ignorance." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The Valkyrie guards surrounding the room tensed, their eyes narrowing with lethal intent. Carter's heart raced, and the other humans exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't just a diplomatic failure, it was a catastrophic misstep. Before anyone could react, the Emperor snapped his fingers, and the guards immediately moved into action. The humans were escorted from the room with precision, their fate uncertain. Ambassador Carter tried to protest, but her voice was drowned out by the hum of the Valkyrie's advanced technology, a reminder of just how vulnerable they were in this alien domain. As they were hurried away from the palace, Carter's mind raced. She had no idea how badly they'd miscalculated. They were now at the mercy of a species known for their speed, strength, and absolute ruthlessness. The humans had just made an enemy of the galaxy's most lethal species, and there was no turning back. The tension aboard the human fleet was palpable. Ambassador Carter sat in her quarters, staring at the dimly lit screen in front of her. The transmission from the Valkyrie Emperor played on a loop in her mind. "You will pay the price for your ignorance." The words echoed in her head, a chilling reminder of the fragile line between diplomacy and disaster. It didn't take long for the Valkyrie to make good on their threat. Within hours of leaving the capital, the human fleet received a transmission. An overwhelming display of firepower, a message from the Valkyrie. The screen flickered to life, showing the cold, emotionless face of the Emperor. "Humanity," the Emperor's voice rang out, icy and indifferent. "You have insulted us. Now you will understand the consequences." The transmission cut out abruptly, and the humans were left in stunned silence. They had expected a reprisal, but nothing like this. Soon after, sensors aboard the human ships began picking up massive signatures in the distance, Valkyrie warships, already en route to a nearby human colony. The Valkyrie didn't waste time. Within hours, their ships arrived at the colony, and the attack began. The humans on the ground had no idea what was coming. The Valkyrie assault was swift and brutal, a flurry of destruction that struck without warning. From the sky, Valkyrie ships rained down death. Plasma cannons tore through buildings, while dropships deployed elite Valkyrie soldiers who moved with terrifying precision. Their weapons and technology were beyond anything humanity had encountered. Within minutes, the colony was in ruins. The few survivors fled, but there was nowhere to hide. The Valkyrie were too fast, too organized. Back in orbit, Captain Marcus Hale, commander of the human fleet, watched helplessly as his sensors tracked the carnage. His stomach turned as he saw the plumes of fire rising from the colony's surface. His people were dying, and he couldn't do a thing to stop it. The Valkyrie had struck without warning, and they weren't done yet. "Prepare to engage," Hale barked, his voice hoarse with anger. His crew scrambled to their stations, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the walls. But deep down, he knew the odds were against them. The Valkyrie had already proven their superiority in both firepower and tactics. A direct confrontation was suicide. Yet, if he didn't act, more lives would be lost. As the human fleet moved into position, Captain Hale tried to formulate a plan. They couldn't fight the Valkyrie on their terms, at least not yet. The human fleet was outmatched, but humanity had something the Valkyrie didn't: adaptability. Hale's mind raced through every possible strategy, every weakness he could exploit. But time was running out. The Valkyrie ships were closing in fast, and the clock was ticking. Then, a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Commander Ava Lynn, his chief strategist. She had a plan. "We hit them where they don't expect," she said, her eyes steely with resolve. "We don't fight them head-on. We make them chase us. We'll use the asteroid field to our advantage. Get close, force them into tight formations. Once we've got them where we want, we hit them hard and fast." It was a risky move, but it was their only chance. Captain Hale nodded grimly. "Do it." As the human fleet maneuvered toward the dense asteroid field, they hoped the Valkyrie would follow them. They couldn't beat them in a straight fight, but they could outsmart them. For the first time since the attack, there was a glimmer of hope. If they survived this, they might just have a chance. The hours following the Valkyrie's devastating assault on the colony were the darkest humanity had faced. As the smoke rose from the ruined world, the human fleet, now in orbit above the disaster, sat in stunned silence. Captain Hale stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the view screen as the destruction below burned bright against the dark expanse of space. The mission, once full of hope, now felt like a desperate scramble for survival. "We can't just sit here." Commander Lynn's voice cut through the heavy silence as she stepped up beside Hale. "We have to act. We've already lost too much." Hale's jaw tightened. "I know, but I don't have the resources to face the Valkyrie head-on. They've already crushed us once. What do we have left?" Lynn, ever the strategist, leaned forward, her eyes scanning the data on the console in front of them. "What we have left is ingenuity. They might have the superior firepower, but they underestimate us. They think we're just a nuisance. We need to make them regret that." Her words echoed in the stillness of the bridge, sparking something in Hale. The humans were survivors. They had come so far in the galaxy, and they weren't about to let a species like the Valkyrie wipe them out without a fight. Humanity wasn't just going to sit back and wait to be conquered. The spark of resistance was growing, and it was time to fan it into a flame. The message spread quickly. Across the fleet, commanders and officers from every corner of humanity's military arm were rallying their forces. They were gathering every piece of technology, every ship, and every person capable of fighting back. No one was going to sit this out. "We've been through worse," Admiral Soren Jacobs, a veteran of the human fleet, said as he walked onto the bridge. His eyes were steely with determination. "If they think they can break us with a few blows, they've got another thing coming." Hale turned to face him. Then it's time we show them just how far humans are willing to go. We may not have the power to fight them directly, but we can fight with everything we've got. We have our minds, our creativity, and our sheer will. Let's use that. With a renewed sense of purpose, the humans went to work. There was no time to waste. Across the fleet, engineers, scientists, and soldiers began brainstorming solutions. The humans had always been adaptable, able to make something from nothing when it was needed most. Now, they needed to push that ingenuity to its limits. One by one, they began to devise strategies. They repurposed civilian ships into makeshift war vessels, outfitted with new weapons designed to disrupt the Valkyrie's advanced technology. They scavenged parts from their damaged ships and turned them into traps, devices that would confuse and disorient the Valkyrie if they came after them. The humans had no illusions about their chances in a direct confrontation, but they knew one thing. The Valkyrie were too proud to see what was coming. As the preparations continued, humanity's spirit began to shine through. The sheer determination and creativity of every individual involved was becoming something larger than just a military response. It was a symbol of humanity itself. The Valkyrie had assumed that they would break under pressure, that the humans would submit quietly. But they hadn't counted on one thing: the tenacity of the human spirit. In a brief moment of calm, Captain Hale stood on the bridge, looking at the team he had come to trust with his life. He could see it in their eyes, the fire of resistance. It was the same fire that had driven humanity from their primitive beginnings, that had fueled their rise to space, and that would now see them through this war. "We're not done yet," Hale said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "We will fight for every inch. We will make them regret underestimating us." And with that, the human fleet set its course. The Valkyrie might have started this war, but it was humanity that was going to finish it. The days following their decision to fight back were filled with frantic activity. The human fleet, though outmatched in firepower, had quickly adapted. Their ingenuity was their greatest weapon, and it was time to put it to the test. Captain Hale and Commander Lin stood at the center of the war room, surrounded by maps of the surrounding star systems. The Valkyrie fleet was still moving forward, their eyes fixed on the human colonies, but the humans had already begun to fight back in the only way they could, through deception and cunning. "We know they rely on their advanced sensors," Lin said, pointing to a holographic display. "If we can blind them, we can force them into mistakes. We'll use the asteroid fields as cover and create false signals to confuse their fleet." Hale nodded. "We'll need to act fast. They're not stupid. If we don't catch them off guard, they'll tear us apart." It was a risky move, but the humans had no choice. They couldn't afford to engage the Valkyrie directly and hope to win. Their strength lay in their ability to think outside the box, to do the unexpected, and to throw their enemies off balance. As the fleet moved into position, Commander Lin worked with the engineers to create a network of false signals, decoy ships, fake distress calls, and simulated damage reports. The plan was to make the Valkyrie believe there was an easy target nearby, drawing them into a trap. "The Valkyrie are predictable," Lin said, her eyes narrowing. "Their pride makes them overconfident. We'll use that against them." The first phase of the plan unfolded quickly. The Valkyrie ships, sensing what they thought was an opportunity, moved toward the decoy signal with all the speed and precision of a predator closing in on its prey. The humans watched from their hidden positions, waiting for the right moment to strike. And then, as if on cue, the Valkyrie fleet entered the asteroid field. It was a perfect setup. The dense rock formations would block their sensors, and the narrow passages would make it difficult to maneuver. The Valkyrie ships, accustomed to open space and swift maneuvers, would be forced to fight in a labyrinth of debris. "Now," Hale ordered, his voice sharp with determination. "Move in." With a flash of light, the human fleet broke through the edges of the asteroid field, opening fire on the Valkyrie ships before they could fully react. The decoy signals had worked perfectly. drawing the Valkyrie into the exact location the humans wanted. Now, it was time to turn the tables. The Valkyrie, momentarily stunned, scrambled to regain control. Their ships were large and powerful, but they were not built for quick turns or navigating dense asteroid fields. The humans, on the other hand, had adapted their ships to be agile, using the environment to their advantage. One by one, human ships targeted Valkyrie vessels that had been slowed by the asteroids. They didn't try to destroy them outright. Instead, they focused on disabling key systems. The human fleet struck swiftly, their ships darting in and out of the debris, creating chaos and confusion among the Valkyrie. The Valkyrie were used to overwhelming their enemies with brute force, but they had never faced anything like this. It wasn't a decisive victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. The Valkyrie were thrown off balance, their superior technology momentarily neutralized. The humans had fought smart, exploiting the weaknesses of their enemies and using the environment as a weapon. As the human fleet withdrew, Captain Hale allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. It wasn't over yet, but the humans had made their mark. The Valkyrie had learned that humanity was not just a simple species to be crushed. They were a force to be reckoned with, unpredictable, adaptive, and ready to fight. The victory in the asteroid field, though a small one, ignited a fire within humanity. It was the first clear indication that the Valkyrie were not invincible. The human fleet had struck with precision and cunning, and the results had shaken the Valkyrie. But the battle was far from over. The Valkyrie would not give up easily. In the aftermath of the ambush, Captain Hale knew they needed more than just tactics. They needed a leader, someone who could inspire the entire fleet, someone who could unite humanity's forces under a single banner. And that leader, Hale realized, was already among them. Commander Elara Hayes was a strategist like no other. Calm, analytical, and fiercely determined, she had proven herself in every skirmish since the conflict began. But it wasn't just her tactical brilliance that stood out. It was her ability to see the bigger picture, to recognize that the war was about more than just military might. It was about willpower, about outthinking the enemy, and about rallying people to a cause. Hale had watched her in action, always with an unwavering focus and a steady hand. It was clear to him that if anyone could lead humanity to victory, it was Hayes. "I want you to take command of the fleet," Hale said one evening, after a long day of strategy sessions. "You've earned it." Hayes met his gaze, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she nodded. "I won't let you down, Captain." Her appointment sent ripples through the fleet. Though she was relatively young, her record was impeccable. She had earned the respect of the soldiers, engineers, and officers under her command. Now she was more than just a commander. She was a symbol of humanity's resolve. The fleet rallied behind her, inspired by her quiet confidence and unwavering belief in their ability to fight back. Under Hayes's leadership, the fleet began to shift its tactics. They couldn't fight the Valkyrie in open battle, not with their superior numbers and technology. But they could use what they had: creativity, resourcefulness, and a deep understanding of their enemy. Hayes directed the fleet to continue using guerrilla tactics, striking fast and retreating before the Valkyrie could retaliate. She understood that every victory, no matter how small, would accumulate over time, wearing down the Valkyrie's confidence. Hayes's first major test as fleet commander came sooner than expected. The Valkyrie, enraged by their defeat, launched a massive counteroffensive aimed directly at the human fleet's core systems. Their ships outnumbered the humans, and their firepower was overwhelming. This would be the ultimate test of the strategy Hayes had crafted. The battle unfolded in the depths of an uncharted nebula, a location where the Valkyrie's sensors were limited, and the playing field was more even. Hayes's fleet entered the nebula under the cover of darkness, their ships moving silently through the dense gas clouds. The Valkyrie fleet, sensing an opportunity to destroy the human fleet once and for all, charged headlong into the nebula, unaware of the trap they were walking into. Hayes had predicted their every move. As the Valkyrie ships closed in, the human fleet sprang their ambush. Small, agile ships darted out from behind asteroids and clouds, targeting Valkyrie engines and critical systems with pinpoint accuracy. The Valkyrie, caught off guard and unable to adjust to the unpredictable human tactics, found themselves in disarray. Hayes's leadership was evident in every move. She had orchestrated this chaos to perfection. When the battle was over, the Valkyrie had suffered significant losses. The human fleet, though battered, emerged victorious once again. It wasn't just the tactical victory that mattered, it was the message it sent. The Valkyrie were no longer certain of their invincibility. Humanity had a leader in Commander Elara Hayes, and under her command, they were a force to be reckoned with. As the surviving human ships regrouped, Hale turned to Hayes. "You've done it," he said, his voice filled with pride. "The Valkyrie won't forget this." Hayes' expression was focused, but there was a spark in her eyes. "This is just the beginning. We've shown them we can hurt them. Now, we show them we can win." The human fleet's success in the nebula sent shockwaves through the galaxy. It was a victory that no one had anticipated. The Valkyrie, with their overwhelming firepower and reputation as the most lethal species in the galaxy, had been dealt a humiliating blow by a race they had once dismissed as insignificant. Commander Elara Hayes had proven that humanity's resilience and creativity could hold its own against the might of the Valkyrie. But as the humans celebrated their victory, the Valkyrie were already preparing their retaliation. The loss of face was a blow the Valkyrie could not tolerate. Their pride demanded retribution, and it would come in a form that humanity had never seen before. The Valkyrie Emperor, seething with fury, convened a council of his top generals. They were not concerned with the loss of a few ships or the fleeting setback. This was about crushing humanity once and for all. The humans had embarrassed them, and that was something the Valkyrie would not allow to stand. "Humanity believes they can outsmart us," the Emperor growled, his eyes blazing with anger. "We will show them the true power of the Valkyrie. We will make them regret ever crossing us." The Valkyrie fleet began its preparations in secret, gathering its most advanced weapons and enlisting new experimental technologies that had never before been deployed in battle. The humans had won a few skirmishes, but the Valkyrie were about to change the rules of the game. Back in the human fleet, Commander Hayes knew the victory in the nebula had been a turning point, but it was also the calm before the storm. The Valkyrie would retaliate with everything they had. It was only a matter of time before they struck. "We need to be ready," Hayes said, standing at the helm of the bridge, her eyes scanning the tactical display. "They'll come for us harder than ever before." Her officers nodded, understanding the weight of her words. The fleet had just begun to regain its footing, but now they would have to face a Valkyrie war machine that was about to unleash its full fury. The first sign of the Valkyrie's retaliation came a week later. A massive fleet of Valkyrie warships dropped out of hyperspace near a human-controlled system. These ships were unlike any the humans had seen before, larger, faster, and equipped with weapons that seemed designed to obliterate entire fleets in a single strike. The human fleet scrambled to respond, but Hayes knew this would be no easy fight. The Valkyrie were bringing everything to bear, and they had no intention of letting humanity survive this time. The balance of the war had shifted once again, and the humans were now forced to face the full wrath of the Valkyrie Empire. "We're going to need every ship we can muster," Hayes said, her voice firm. "This isn't just about surviving. It's about showing them that we will fight to the last." The human fleet rallied under her leadership. Despite the odds, despite the overwhelming force of the Valkyrie, they were ready to stand and fight. Hayes had built a team of soldiers, engineers, and officers who were more than just a military. They were a family, bound together by the shared belief that they could overcome anything. They had already defied the Valkyrie once. Now, they would do it again. The Valkyrie fleet arrived in force, its ships stretching across the stars. Their sheer numbers were enough to send a wave of dread through the human ranks. But Hayes refused to be intimidated. "Hold steady," she commanded. "We've faced worse and come out on top. This isn't over yet." The battle began with a deafening roar, the sound of ships firing on all sides. The Valkyrie unleashed their devastating weapons, targeting the human fleet's most vulnerable points. But the humans had learned from their previous engagements. They were faster, more agile, and more resourceful than ever. Every human ship moved with purpose, dodging and weaving through the deadly barrage of fire. For hours, the two fleets clashed in the vast emptiness of space, a chaotic, deadly dance. The Valkyrie might have had the advantage in firepower, but the humans had the advantage of determination. Each hit the Valkyrie took, each ship they lost, was a reminder that the humans were not so easily defeated. As the battle raged on, Hayes remained resolute. The Valkyrie had underestimated humanity before, and now they were making the same mistake again. The battle raged on for hours, the stars around them turning into a chaotic canvas of explosions and flashes of light. The human fleet had already taken significant damage, but they refused to back down. Each ship in the fleet was doing its best to avoid the brunt of the Valkyrie's fire, relying on their speed and maneuverability. The Valkyrie, with their superior weapons and massive ships, continued to press the attack, pushing the humans to the brink. Commander Hayes stood firm on the bridge, her eyes locked on the tactical display. The Valkyrie had launched their most advanced ships, and it was clear that they intended to wipe out the human resistance once and for all. The sheer power of the Valkyrie fleet was staggering, and yet Hayes could feel a surge of determination sweeping through her crew. They had already fought against the odds before, and they could do it again. "Status report," Hayes barked, her voice cutting through the noise of the command center. "We've lost 2 more ships, Commander," Lieutenant Carter replied, her face tense. "But we've managed to disable a few of their forward vessels. The Valkyrie are beginning to slow down." Hayes narrowed her eyes. The Valkyrie were strong, but they were also predictable. She had seen this before. Their tactics were based on overwhelming force, not adaptability. If they were losing ground, even in this early stage, that meant something was changing. "They're not used to being on the defensive," Hayes muttered, a plan beginning to form in her mind. "They think they can overpower us with sheer force, but we're not going to let them have that satisfaction." Hayes turned to her team, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Prepare for a counterattack. I want all ships ready to engage when I give the word." In the midst of the battle, the human fleet began to shift. Instead of retreating or holding their ground passively, Hayes ordered a full repositioning. The smaller, faster ships of the human fleet darted in and out of the enemy's range, launching hit-and-run attacks on the Valkyrie's flanks. It was a dangerous move, but it caught the Valkyrie off guard. With each strike, the human ships moved like shadows, appearing out of nowhere to strike at weak points in the Valkyrie formations. They didn't have the raw firepower to match the Valkyrie, but they had the edge in agility, speed, and unpredictability. The Valkyrie, used to imposing their will on their enemies, found themselves forced into a fight that was less about brute force and more about precision and tactics. It wasn't enough to win the battle outright, but it was enough to start tipping the scales. The Valkyrie fleet began to lose cohesion. The human fleet's smaller ships, equipped with advanced stealth technology, could slip through gaps in the Valkyrie's defenses and deal damaging blows to key systems. With each hit, the Valkyrie commanders grew more frustrated. "We're starting to push them back," Lieutenant Carter reported, a glimmer of hope in her voice. "The Valkyrie fleet is spreading out. They're losing coordination." "Good," Hayes said. "Keep up the pressure. We can't let them regroup." As the battle wore on, Hayes and her fleet pushed the Valkyrie farther from their objective. The tide had turned, but there was no time to relax. The Valkyrie were a relentless enemy, and they would not give up easily. But the human fleet, now fighting with everything they had, knew something the Valkyrie didn't. Their will to survive was stronger than anything the Valkyrie could throw at them. The humans weren't just fighting for victory. They were fighting for their very existence. and that made them unstoppable. In the midst of the chaos, Captain Hale watched from his command ship, a smile creeping onto his face. "We've got them on the ropes," he said, his voice filled with pride. "Now, let's finish this." The final push had begun. The Valkyrie, their pride wounded, were retreating from the battlefield, but not without a fight. As the human fleet pursued, Hayes could see the exhaustion on her crew's faces. They had been fighting for days without rest, but they were relentless, their spirits buoyed by the prospect of victory. The Valkyrie, on the other hand, were losing ground quickly, their ships now scattered and unable to regroup in the face of the coordinated human assault. "All ships, continue the pursuit," Hayes commanded, her voice steadied despite the chaos. "We've got them on the run. Don't give them a chance to recover." The human fleet pushed forward, each ship a testament to human ingenuity and determination. They were battered and bruised, their hulls scarred from the previous battles, but they were not about to stop now. The Valkyrie had underestimated them, thinking they could break humanity with their superior power. But humanity had shown them something far more dangerous than a fleet of ships. It had shown them the strength of a people who would not yield. "Target their command ships," Hayes ordered. "If we take out their leadership, the rest of their fleet will fall apart." Her crew sprang into action, redirecting their focus to the heart of the Valkyrie fleet. The Valkyrie command ships were heavily armored, but Hayes knew their weaknesses. With surgical precision, the human fleet fired on the Valkyrie ships' engines, taking out their ability to escape. The Valkyrie commanders attempted to regroup, but it was too late. The human fleet had already torn apart their lines. As the battle raged on, a message came through from the Valkyrie flagship. The screen flickered to life, revealing the face of the Valkyrie Emperor, his expression one of fury and disbelief. You think you have won." The Emperor snarled. "You are nothing more than a fleeting annoyance to us. The galaxy will burn, and you will all be forgotten." Hayes, standing tall on the bridge, stared coldly at the Emperor. "You may have thought you could crush us, but you were wrong. This is the moment where we take back what's ours." The Valkyrie Emperor's eyes blazed with anger, but there was a hint of fear in his voice now. "You cannot defeat us. You cannot outlast us. Watch us," Hayes said firmly. She cut off the transmission with a single command. The final phase of the battle was underway. The Valkyrie fleet, once a symbol of dominance, was now a shattered remnant of its former strength. The human fleet pressed forward, striking decisively at the Valkyrie ships, their firepower unmatched in precision and coordination. The Valkyrie ships, crippled and disorganized, had no choice but to retreat further. As Hayes looked out across the battlefield, she could see the tide of war turning. The Valkyrie had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now they were paying the price. The human fleet's strikes were methodical, each one designed to weaken the Valkyrie's grip on the galaxy. The Valkyrie, their forces in disarray, had no choice but to fall back. The final blow came when the human fleet targeted the Valkyrie flagship, the heart of their command. It had taken every ounce of strength, every scrap of ingenuity, but the humans had managed to isolate the massive ship from the rest of the fleet. With a final coordinated strike, the Valkyrie flagship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, signaling the collapse of the Valkyrie command structure. A wave of silence washed over the battlefield as the remnants of the Valkyrie fleet scattered. The humans had done it. Against all odds, they had defeated the galaxy's most lethal species. Hayes stood at the bridge of her ship, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. Her voice, steady and strong, echoed across the fleet. "This is our victory. We've shown them that humanity will never be broken. Never." The crew erupted in cheers, but Hayes remained calm, her eyes still focused on the vastness of space. This victory was more than just the defeat of an enemy. It was the rebirth of humanity's spirit. They had fought together, not just for survival, but for the chance to thrive in a galaxy that had once thought them insignificant. And in that moment, humanity had proven to the galaxy that they were anything but.